maybe the universe, maybe God is just computing itself. And maybe we as sons of God are taking part in this computation because we were given some low level admin access, you can code within the realm of your game. But the question is like, how do you get out of the game?
But yeah, like, how would you do that if this was a simulation? I don't know. Like, could you do something so complex in the world that it takes the computer running the universe to make it lag?
Yeah.
Like, could you do that? Would we even know it's lagging though?
Or would we just take it as a normal thing?
Yeah, because like, is it just like a clock that's ticking, and if it lags, the next bit that goes, we don't know that there's been a kind of meta time difference there. I don't know. It's as cliche as it sounds, it's the best thing ever. Yeah, it's amazing. I've always been excited for having a kid, and I was speaking to all the nurses there and said that, look, what's the next steps? And they went, well, he's not latched on yet, like to the boob, so we want to keep him here for another day or two and see if it improves and everything like that. And I said, no, I'm taking her home. What are the next steps for us to do, like paperwork and stuff? And they went, well, you can't take her home. I was like, I can take her home, actually. This is not a prison. And they were like, you can't, it's against medical advice. And I was like, okay.
that magic trick.
I know. But they were like, baby's not latched on. And I'm like, why do you think that is? She's not had any sleep.
I believe that if you're in touch with yourself, whether it is through prayer, contemplation, just quieting the mind, and I'm not talking we are the mind, I think our awareness is way above the mind. The mind is just yet another layer and a tool. I can tell by the way I feel whether or not something is sinful.
Fast forward to me having a baby, I've always had the notion of bringing them up Christian, but it seemed a bit too two-faced, a bit hypocritical. So I was like, okay, now that I listen to podcasts, a lot of the people that I listen to are Christian, and they're very smart, and they're a lot smarter than I am, and they're encouraging me to go to church a lot, and so I've always had it in the back of my mind, I need to go to church and give it a shot. And one piece of advice, I think it was from Jordan Peterson, and I think that C.S. Lewis and a bunch of other people have said it, is treat Christianity as though it's true and see what happens. I'd like to become more of a godly man. There's lots of men in my life now that are, I want to get to be like them, as much as possible, be like Jesus as much as possible.
Hello and welcome everyone, and this is a second time I'm introducing to you my friend Aaron. Funnily enough, for the first time you'll see his face, even if it's just from the profile, mind you. And I don't know, I think we're just gonna have a little conversation. Many changes, stuff happened, life's going.
Oh yeah.
So where do you want to take it?
I've got a question for you. Who have you had on the most in your podcast?
Apart from myself? Yeah. I don't know. I've definitely had a few people twice, so you're second time here as well.
You had anyone 3 times?
Yeah, I wonder. I don't think so.
Oh, all right.
Yeah.
Have you had a favourite?
Oh wow! Okay, this is getting political and difficult straight away. For sure. I've had a few, and it's it's like a learning curve, right? So it is no surprise to me that with each episode I learn a bit more. I have a cool conversation. Maybe in the meantime I've read a few books or whatever, and then Yulia keeps saying, like, whenever I call her after the interview or whatever conversation, I'm like, oh, this was so amazing. I think this might be the best one yet. She's like, you always say that.
Oh, class.
Which makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because we're always trying to be better at it. I definitely enjoyed wholeheartedly my conversation with Chris Barkley lately. Funnily enough, we actually did 2, and the first one did not get, I think I mentioned it to you. Yeah. The first one did not air, and it's interesting as well, like we were discussing after the recording, how it sort of fell into place, whereas the first one, for him, it felt like it was not really what he wanted, and he wasn't sure whether he wants to show the space of his house. And for me, I really wanted it, you know, I was so excited to do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's this forceful, like if you force something through, then it's not exactly right. So the second one, it literally came around, like he reached out to me after I crossed his name off the list as like, I'm not gonna try to follow up anymore, you know, which is interesting. Like you let go and then you get it. And I really enjoyed the conversation with Joe lately. And I think it was particularly interesting for me because it was challenging the way, you know, he's a worthy opponent in a discussion about God, right?
Oh yeah,
and
100%.
Like while I might be able to, you know, chat with my wife or with some of my friends about it, and still hold, you know, a certain level of discussion up to par, I think with him it was like I actually was challenged to discuss these things.
That's cool.
And
that's what you want, isn't it?
Yeah. And then certainly I think quite a surprising one, but not really, is, you know, like I've been geeking out about the whole finance economy stuff, and I've not had a chance to discuss it with anyone other than my friends, and many of them are not as interested in it as myself, right? And then this guy Paul reached out to me, who's an investor, capital investment guy in Canada, I think. And he reached out to me. He emailed that he just published a new book, and you know he saw that my podcast is about books and about finance, whatever, and it fitted perfectly with the season as well. And not necessarily that was the greatest episode. I think it's really, really valuable and great. But for me, that was a really cool episode of like seeing I can actually now hold a really cool conversation with someone about this topic. You know, It's like a little check. Am I, because like for example with you, we've had an interview before about cybersecurity. I don't know jack shit about it.
Me too.
So don't let your employees
know.
So from that point, I cannot really hold the conversation. I can I can ask interesting questions and maybe we can speculate, but with finance or with this whole like what's going on with the economy, it turns out I was able to have a cool conversation, and it wasn't like I was chasing, what's that? What's this? What's that? I was actually, so yeah, I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is like whenever the conversations are challenging to me, they're probably a bit more interesting for me than the ones that are quite like smooth sailing, maybe a bit dry because of it,
Yeah. So like the dream's to get like proper experts on eventually.
Oh yeah.
Like Joe Rogan gets to have whoever he wants on, and he gets to have the most interesting conversations, right? And I mean, you're getting like a glimpse of that, aren't you?
Yeah.
Just having someone an expert in their field come on and have a good battle with you is good conversation.
Yeah, I've had I have another one on Thursday, which is with some insurance finance guy. And they reached out as well, and like I'm literally I'm not even preparing, to be honest. Like they didn't provide me with any material to go with, so I'm just gonna have a conversation, see what happens, right?
You said that you have been getting better, or like you're getting better each time.
Yeah, for sure.
Then in what way for you are you you talking like practically, like you're learning a lot about lots of different topics, or do you feel like the art of interviewing is getting better? Or
Yeah, I mean, one thing for sure is just being a bit more aware of how to hold a cool conversation with basically anyone, right?
Right.
And the art of conversing is definitely a big one, especially in a space. It's one thing to do it on screen, but on screen you can mask more of energy than if you're face to face. And like, whatever you guys are seeing on screen, it's basically a 2 meter by 1 rug with 2 chairs, right? So it's quite a personal space we're holding here.
Yeah.
And imagine that you're my friend. We fucking manhandled each other at jiu-jitsu, over and over. Imagine the sometimes the tension that this space creates for someone who literally, like Joe, literally met me 10 minutes before starting recording. Which is also why I think many, like, the end game of podcasting is to have a table and a bit more space, so that person is not feeling also, because it's both of us, right? Yeah. We're both creating this space. Of course, I can accommodate it to be more comfortable for you. So that's what I mean. Certainly for myself, as we learn, as we were talking about, like faith or spirituality, energy and stuff, that's definitely one thing that is improving in terms of being able to just hold the conversation and make the other person comfortable, but not compromise in a sense of like, oh yes, oh yeah, you go, boy. Yeah. Like actually just have a conversation. But certainly, it's like an upward spiral. Like the more we have conversations that are challenging for us, the better we are at having those, right? So from that standpoint, I have no doubt that, it's like this idea from Peterson that we should become articulate, right? The best way to become articulate is to just have loads of really challenging conversations and read, learn, whatever in between. So you're not only just talking about the same thing, because imagine how boring this podcast would be if for the past 4 years I didn't learn anything new. I would just be regurgitating ideas from my, first book or whatever. I don't know. So.
Is there any kind of person that you struggle interviewing? So like, I've seen some conversations like where the person's a bit awkward, not as easy to interview. Like one that stands out is when Elon Musk went on Joe Rogan for the first time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it felt like a difficult conversation to have. Or there was the guy that made Signal that went on as well, and that was quite an awkward conversation. But I've always loved those kinds of people. Like I don't know what it is, but I love when I get someone who's a bit shy, introverted, socially awkward, and I love trying to like bring them out of their shell to the point of comfort where they have like a smile on their face and they actually they lose themselves in the moment of talking about what they want to talk about. So but I know that some interviewers don't like that. Like they find it a little bit difficult actually. So do you? Yeah. What do you think?
I mean, first of all, I think what you're referring to is just recognizing in that other person the struggle that you've gone through. Like I certainly feel that. There are situations in my social life when I literally am at loss for like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. Like it's kind of awkward. And with some people it just clicks, and with some people it doesn't, right? It's almost like as if some code did not code together, So yeah, in terms of awkward conversations, I think the biggest challenge for an interviewer or for a good podcast is if the person who's the sole focus of the podcast, because in this context right now we're just talking, we're doing something completely different than majority of conversations that I have with my guests. Usually the guest is the main dish, and I'm
Yes.
literally just enticing them to be flavorsome. The problem is if the dish is dry because the person is, for example, just answering yes, no, oh yeah, of course. That's a conversation killer, you know. Like if I'm asking you about something and you just nod, or I've had experiences before where the person is like, the topic finished before I even got to the second question, because they just answered in a matter-of-fact way, and the way they answered indicates that there is nothing else to probe there. I think that's when the conversation stops being a conversation and it becomes like an awkward interview. You know, like a Google form kind of feedback, right? Like, oh, what's your favorite color? Yellow. Okay, go to the next line. So yeah, I think that's the biggest challenge. I cannot pinpoint one that was like that, but I know that there were some times when that was the challenge for me, and then of course it makes me feel awkward because I'm trying to entice it, and I don't want you to feel bad about, you know, because you're gonna potentially watch it later, and if you see what I'm seeing right now as this is not working, it's like, yeah, I've never had a situation when I refused to post though. You know, once it's done, it's up to you to stop it. You know, for example, after this conversation, I'll prepare it, and then you can pull the plug on it or not, dependent.
I'll see how my hair is.
Yeah, right. Fun fact, Aaron came in, and when he realized that we're gonna be recording with video, he went to sort out his hair.
Yeah, it was looking a bit big, yeah, a bit afro.
No, yeah, but that's the thing, you know, another, and I think this is more relevant in general to life. There is this idea from Carnegie's, like, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Talk to people about themselves and they will listen to you for hours, right? That's when you have a good conversation. And I guess that's also why when you're saying that even if a person is quite shy, they get out of their shell when you actually show them, pay them attention, and that interest creates for them the space, right? They're suddenly, even if you're shy, if someone's interested in you, at least you can be suspicious or whatever, but at least you're gonna be like, okay, something's up here, you know. It's no longer just me with my thoughts and no one pays attention to me, which is usually, I think, the case for people.
What was that book you just mentioned?
How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Right, okay. I need to read that.
It's like some of them, yeah, but it's definitely a worthy read. It's one of the I think more practical ones, like 12 Rules for Life in a sense.
Nice.
Like with some ideas that if you stick to those ideas, you will get better at just, you know, interacting in this matrix of a universe, let's say. You know what I heard today on the podcast, and I wanted to share it with you. So, you know how in data, in trying to develop like computer games or, you know, computational power, there is always a striving to make it more efficient and to keep the data more compressed, right? Because if you can compress data, you can make it more efficient and store more in one, you know. So this guy on Peter McCormack's show talks about the idea that information is the fifth element. It's the data in the computational nature of our universe, and if you consider the whole evolution of like how to make the most efficient, you know, leaf, or how to make the most efficient whatever, that's effectively the compression. Symmetry, he said, is a compression of and efficiency of data storage.
Yes. Yeah, because you can have half and then just do it times 2. Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. You know, they talk about whether or not the universe is a simulation or what or not, regardless. But it rings true that like you're rendering the reality, like we're rendering the reality.
So is that how it works then? You know, like to make that shape, is there like DNA that would like, I don't know, like it would give one half of this its shape, and then there's like something else in DNA that says, "Oh, do it for the other side as well." So
Maybe.
instead of, I don't know, is that how it
maybe,
works?
but like you know the Fibonacci sequence.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in nature, it's everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
We like only there is this idea that nature hates straight lines. Only humans build it. That's
Yeah.
why you can see a person in the woods straight away, because if they're not wearing camo, you can just see their parka. You know.
Yeah.
So he referred obviously like it's way above my pay grade. He wrote a book about it, which is like the second law of of information dynamics or something like that. I can link it there. I've not read it yet. I literally listened to this podcast earlier today. But he mentions the Fibonacci sequence as this optimizing strategy, essentially. This ratio, the golden ratio, being just a way of optimizing efficiency. And if you consider that when you make a baby with your wife, you're giving some information, your wife's giving some information, and that information is the source of kids' life, or at least information about his physical being. You could consider everything to be just like, maybe the universe, maybe God is just computing itself. And maybe we as sons of God are taking part in this computation because we were given some low level admin access, you can code within the realm of your game. But the question is like, how do you get out of the game?
It is quite a fun line of thought to go down. I've thought about it quite a lot because obviously I
Code.
and play games and stuff as well. So it's like how would you? Because like in games you can get some information about the thing that's running it by doing certain things in it. But yeah, like how would you do that if this was a simulation? I don't know. Like could you do something so complex in the world that it takes the computer running the universe to make it lag?
Yeah.
Like, could you do that? Would we even know it's lagging though?
Or would we just take it as a normal thing?
Yeah, because like, is it just like a clock that's ticking, and if it lags, the next bit that goes, we don't know that there's been a kind of meta time difference there. I don't know.
Yeah,
but yeah, that's quite fun.
You've literally just pinpointed what they've gotten in the end about it.
Oh right. Okay.
The $1 billion question of like how to stop the simulation from within the simulation. Like how do you ensure? And maybe you need to overload it to the point when it just like for a moment glitches, and then like in Rick and Morty, they were just doing all those random things that they were not supposed to do, and then there was a moment when the simulation lagged, and they saw that it's a simulation, and they just went for the exit.
Well, like you could, but if you did manage to make it crash, right? The overall server crash or lag, we wouldn't know about it because we're processes in it, right? And they just revert back. We might have done this conversation already, but there was a crash, so they had to fix it and go back. We're doing it again.
Or we would crash ourselves. That's the question is which part of that potential simulation we are. If we are also being rendered, then by crashing it, you've kind of cut the tree branch on which you're sitting.
Yeah. Or like, you could send a message out, by crashing it. Because you can, if you're in a game and you manage to crash, or an app or whatever, and you've got control over some text, you can get it to log, in the overall crash, like the message. Could you do that? Like, if you manage to find something that might crash, then you can just write down in a bit of paper in that scene a message and get out to them. I don't know.
Maybe that's exactly what the Bible is. It's at least the Old Testament is just a bunch of stories of how it was crashing. you know, like the big flood and all that. Maybe that is just an indicator of like beware, don't do that, or like the bubble, don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, because it crashed. Yeah, I don't know. Okay, I have a question for you then.
Go for it.
And feel free to share however much you want, but you've recently, well, almost a year now, became a father, which is wonderful, and I can't wait for my kids, God willing, even though I think I'm more excited than Yulia. I don't know if that's the case for many men out there. I don't know.
I was, yeah.
Yeah. How's that?
Yeah, it's yeah, as cliche as it sounds, it's the best thing ever. Yeah, it's amazing. I've always been excited for having a kid, and you know, we have always planned it. I think I've been. Well, I'm a more enthusiastic person, so I've definitely showed that I've been excited about it. Heather, I can't speak for her, but I would say that she was excited too, but I was probably a bit more excited. It's obviously nerve-wracking for the woman, but I can tell you like the story of the birth. I mean, that was a wild ride actually.
For context, we're talking in UK terms, right?
Yes. Oh yes. So we planned to have a home birth, right? And I mean, we got the pool and all that set up and stuff. I even got, because the pool I think weighs like 500 tons when it's got, sorry, not 500 tons, half of a ton.
Oh yeah.
When it gets all of the water in it and stuff, and you know, it's not actually wide. It's narrower than you'd think. And I was looking at, you know, just the floor itself, like what can it take, and it can't take that much. It says like don't load it to that amount in such a short space. So what I had to do is I had to go and get plywood from like B&Q and like lay 2 massive planks, then put the pool on so it actually spread the weight enough that it wouldn't like, you know, cause a collapse potentially. But yeah, so like, you know, when you're having a home birth, the midwives that, yeah, they're called the community midwives, I think. They come out and they make sure everything's all right, and they have regular checkups and stuff. And they're incredible people. Like, they are very practical and just, you know, very sensible in telling you what you should be expecting and everything. When it comes to the baby, you know, or when it comes to going into labour, you start having contractions and you basically wait until they're like once every couple of minutes. Then you call the hospital and say like, can you send out the midwives now, it's going to happen. Heather had, when that happened, right, I think it was Tuesday night, she started having contractions. She was watching a film with her brother. She was like, oh, I'm not going to say anything. She came up and I think I was on the computer with my friends, and she said, by the way, I'm having contractions, and I was like, oh my goodness, it's happening. And you know, that night you just got to wait. You just got they advise you just carry on your life, like it'll happen when it happens. Heather didn't sleep much. I think she got like an hour that night, and then Wednesday I basically planned this whole day of like love. We put some music on, we danced, we sang together, we went and had some food and everything. It was really lovely. And it got to basically 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I think it was. So all day she'd been having like contractions every 10 minutes or whatnot. And she went to the toilet and she bled. She bled a little bit, and it was only a little bit of blood, but they said like, call us up if that happens. Heather was like, don't do it, because she just had a feeling like they'd want to take control and get you in the hospital and everything. And I was like, well, let's just see what happens. Called them up, and they were like, can you just come in and we'll just monitor you just to make sure everything's okay. So I convinced Heather. I said, look, we'll just go out for an hour, it'll be another thing that we're doing, and then we'll come back. So we got there and into triage, and they put us in this room and put Heather up on some monitors, monitored the baby's heartbeat and everything. Everything was totally fine. And they left us in this room with no windows for a couple of hours. And we're like, we want to leave. And this doctor came down and basically said, we want you to actually have an emergency, not an emergency C-section, have an induced labour. So they wanted to induce the labour because he said because it could be that the placenta's rupturing. That's a sign of the placenta rupturing. So it's quite scary stuff. I'm going to pause there and I'm going to go back actually a little bit.
Sure.
The week leading up to the labour starting, we were told to go into the hospital to monitor because Heather was quite past her due date. The NHS gave her a due date that was 5 days earlier than the predicted one from when we knew that she got pregnant. So we knew the day that she got pregnant essentially, and that gave us a due date of 5 days after. But they went on that and they were like, well, we went and visited, all of the signs were normal, like amniotic fluid was okay, the baby's heartbeat was okay, and her heartbeat and pressure was alright. But like, we want to schedule you in for C-section, or for induced labour, sorry. And we were like, why do you want to do that? And the lass said, well, because after this point, 1 in 100 births are stillborn, right? You've got 1 in 100 chance that your baby's gonna die. And I was like, whoa, like, one, you're saying that to Heather, like, that's just a very insensitive thing to do, and it's only gonna really worry her. And two, I have scoured the NHS website and I cannot find any numbers even remotely close to that. Like, can you tell where you got that? And the closest I found was like 1 in 350, I think it was, and that's for babies that were underweight. Our baby was not underweight, like it was a big baby. And so she was like, well, I don't need to tell you where I get my stats from because I'm on the board of blah, 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 this doctor consultant. And I just called her out. I said, like, you can't say that and not back up your stats. Like, I've gone everywhere for the stats to make sure that we're doing the right thing. Anyway, she came and apologised to me later about having some dodgy stats. But I'm like, you're a consultant doctor.
Yeah.
This is absolutely crazy.
And it's emotional. Like, that's an emotional information.
Yeah. And, so I was already, not sceptical, but I was very, cagey around medical professionals, shall we say. And so, I mean, this tipped me over the edge. We were really wanting a natural birth, or Heather was wanting not to, because when you start inducing, your risk goes up of tearing and everything like that. I think stat-wise, it's going to probably save babies' lives, but it doesn't take into account any sort of trauma and things. And by all metrics, Heather was, an absolute perfect example of a pregnancy. So we wanted to do it naturally. So we had that. Then fast forward to us being in triage, the doctor came down and, I'm sorry, I'm rambling on, but it's just
No,
story.
not at all.
He said that, there's a chance that your placenta can be rupturing.
That's at the time when you went to the check.
Yeah. So that sounds scary. I'm like, what is a placenta rupturing? And he's like, well, it's when the placenta comes off the wall and basically blood stops going to the baby. So it's pretty bad, to be honest. And we're like, okay, fantastic. That doesn't sound good. So he stood and chatted to us for 45 minutes, just saying, basically going round and round saying the same thing. They want to induce the labour.
Is there an incentive for them to do that?
I don't know. I think it's because they've probably seen everything that can go wrong. Do you know what I mean?
It's just a control thing.
I don't know. I don't.
Okay.
Like, it could, like, being like on kind of playing devil's advocate or being on their side. They have seen everything go wrong and they just want to save lives.
Yeah.
So like, if there's some harm that comes to Heather, but it saves the baby, 1,000 times out of 1,000, rather than loses one baby out of 1,000, then they're going to do that, even if 1,000 women have a bit of a traumatic event and everything, and which I don't know morally where I stand with that, but it's all about risk. I mean, everything that you do is about risk. So anyway, he went, and we basically like did some looking online and stuff, and seen that it's one out of, I think it's 30,000. Yeah, it's 27 to 30,000 women that have a placenta that's ruptured. And I think it's basically half of women or something like that have. I'm going to get my stats wrong, but I think 1/30,000 is correct. But a massive majority or a massive percentage of women have a bleed, and it's just from the cervix expanding and a blood vessel goes. And if your placenta is ruptured, then it's going to keep bleeding, And so anyway, we went away and we were like, we're just going to go home. Like we're happy with the risk. I know that yous aren't, but we're very close to the hospital. This is a very normal thing. It was a tiny speck. It's not like it was a huge amount of blood or anything. So we went out and told the midwives this, and the midwife came and said, "You can't go." And I said, "We can go." And they went, "No, and it's against medical advice." And I said, "I know, but we're not taking the medical advice." And she said, "We will not send any midwives out to help you with the birth if you go." Right? I said, "So you're denying us medical help because we're going home against the doctor's orders?" And she's like, "Yeah." And I was unbelievably raging, mate. Like
that's essentially blackmail.
It's malpractice. You could see the other midwife next to her who shuddered when she heard that. She said, like, "Please just go back in the room and I'll have a chat." So we did. Another like half an hour, 45 minutes goes by, and they said, "We will send them out, but we're going to send out like a couple of people or something." I was like, "Brilliant, that's totally fine." And but by this point, Heather had dilated 5 centimeters and was having really hard contractions, and we hadn't eaten any food. This was 8 o'clock at this point. We'd been in since 4, and she was like, "I don't think I can go home. Like, this is just getting too much now." So we went, "Okay, we will take a bed up in the labour ward." So that was another like 45 minutes gone. They prepared a room, and we got taken up. And unlike all the rest of the medical folks that we'd met, the labour ward midwives and the community midwives were incredible. Like, we went up and we had 2 lovely young ladies that were looking after us. They'd made the room as nice as possible and stuff, and they were just very kind and gentle and really nice people. And from that point it went from 8 o'clock to 6 o'clock, right, of being in labour, and I cannot tell you how mental it is, mate. Like, it was...
Wait, so they... But for the benefit of our listeners,
yeah,
and also I will have to nip to get the charger in a second. You said that you're only gonna stay the night because you're tired. You did not mention that you're gonna go into labor.
What do you mean, sorry?
I thought that you meant that you've decided because she's tired and because you were there for so long. You're gonna just take up the bed to stay overnight.
No,
to
sorry.
actually go into labor.
Yes.
You take up the bed, meaning to go into labor.
She was having the baby, mate. Like, she was 5.
So it was too late to go back at that point.
It was too late.
I guess they got what they wanted, if anything.
They did. They 100% did. And the story doesn't end here. Like, we had the
8 hours.
Yeah. Well, it was overall 36, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was 8 hours from that point, and honestly, like, Heather was in the zone. I was right there. I was her her post to lean on and stuff, and making sure she was having water between her contractions and everything. She denied all the drugs and stuff. She tried the gas and air, the laughing gas, and that's not a painkiller. Like, she was like, it's rubbish, but it was really good. Like, I was trying to get her off it because her breathing stopped being very good. So she did, like, brilliant, like, what a show of strength. And she came off, and she was just breathing through her nose, out through her mouth and stuff, really just, as the contractions came, and it was like building up her heart rate and stuff, and it was really sore. After that, she gained her breath back and stuff with me. It was amazing. She was in the zone, mate, in the zone. And it came to, I think they got her to push a little bit too early. But if you can imagine, I think it was like an hour or 2 hours of her pushing. It might not have been that long, but it felt like that. And, like, I don't know if you can imagine it, but everything in your body just, like, clenching, going like that, and her even just letting out, not screams, but, like, a lot of noise for, like, a minute, and then it would stop for 30 seconds and whatnot, and then back to it for ages. And I remember at 4 o'clock, I was thinking to myself, I don't know how I can carry on, let alone Heather. It was absolutely insane. So yeah, we did that. She did that. And, baby's head, like, I don't want to get too graphic for the audience, but, obviously you've got the vagina, and the head's coming there, and then it would come back, and then she'd push, it would go there, and it would come back, and it just felt like that for ages. Eventually, she had.
I think you didn't faint, like I've heard about people fainting as they participate.
No, I'm not too grossed out that kind of thing. But anyway, so baby's head came out, right, which was the worst scream I've ever heard in my life, right, come from Heather. It was a blood curdling scream, but his head came out, and all I could think of was, like, jiu-jitsu, that's cutting off his carotid arteries. Like, I don't know, and they're like chill about it. They're like, no, we can wait a bit, and I'm like, mate, he's getting choked here. Like, it's round there, but it's not how it works,
The baby doesn't breathe at that point, right? It
doesn't breathe, but I thought, like, your arteries.
Yeah, but so what's that? Do you know why?
It obviously is just
the way
nature's. But it felt, I was like, I'd be out in 3 seconds if that were me. I don't know. So Heather added the baby and stuff, and it was lovely. Like, we had the.
I'll stop it there. Just a second.
I'll
get the charger, because if it dies on us, that's
not good.
So Heather, so the baby's out.
Yes. Well, before baby even came out, the doctor's trying to come in, right, and say, she's taken a while, let's get her in for a C-section. But the midwives being angels. I mean, I was broken at that point. I was like, do whatever you want. Like, I'm just so worried for Heather at this point. But
after how many hours? Like 4, 6?
Oh, this was ages. I mean, I think they
so
came. Started coming in.
Did he come in when the baby's head was already out? Surely
no. It was that baby's head came out and then was totally out.
Yeah,
next one. But what was I going to say? Yeah, this was like 5 o'clock or something, and the doctor came in and said, we want to take her for a C-section, but the midwife said, no, like, get out. And they're amazing. They're like the Heather's defenders. And I wasn't, like, I was like, I'm so out my depth here. Like, this is, I know I have to defend my wife and everything, but at this point I've nothing to go on, right? I've just got nothing left in the tank, and
I mean, at that point you're just out of your. Yeah. It's no longer on you in a sense, like.
So that was overwhelming. I mean, having the baby come out a little stranger, you know, and I was so worried for Heather that I could enjoy it, but I was still just very amped up and was more worried for her than anything.
Just having on the laughing gas yourself in the corner.
Exactly. And so we had the day there. This was Friday, right? She hasn't slept since Tuesday night, right? Sorry. It was Wednesday she started going into labour. Yeah, it was Wednesday she started going to labour, not a Tuesday.
Yeah, okay.
She hadn't had a full night's sleep since Tuesday night.
So Wednesday night, then Thursday chill, and Thursday evening you went for the check, and Friday morning, that's...
Yes,
what
exactly.
time was he born?
6 o'clock.
You know, it's important. You need to remember that, and we'll come back to it later. Not on the podcast though, but
okay, fine.
I'll show you.
Fine. So we stayed there and had a little bit of like hospital food, and we're gonna go like after she's had all her checks, baby's had all his checks and stuff. We're gonna go home, and they're like, "Why don't you go down to the birthing centre and we'll look after you? You know, like Heather can get some rest, you can go home and get some rest, and we'll make sure everything's okay. Instead of you both going and finding for yourselves." So okay, that's fine. We went down there, and I went home Saturday evening to go and get some sleep. I think I slept for like 12 hours or something, and came back in the morning to find Heather had been lumped with Christopher all night, and they didn't come and help her at all. So she's
basically just as you left her. That's
she hadn't been able to get any sleep because he's been crying and she's been trying to feed him. He's not been taken, and she just didn't get any rest. I was livid. I was so raging because they just left my wife there all on her own. And so I got there, and oh my goodness. So I got Christopher and took him away so she could just get some sleep. That was priority. And I was speaking to all the nurses there and said that, look, what's the next steps? And they went, well, he's not latched on yet, like to the boob, so we want to keep him here for another day or two and see if it improves and everything like that. And I said, no, I'm taking her home. What are the next steps for us to do, like paperwork and stuff? And they went, well, you can't take her home. I was like, I can take her home, actually. This is not a prison. And they were like, you can't, it's against medical advice. And I was like, okay.
that magic trick.
I know, but they were like, she had, like, baby's not latched on, and I'm like, why do you think that is? She's not had any sleep. Don't you know our 3 basic needs: sleep, water, and food? And the food you've given her is dry toast.
Yeah.
That's what you've given her. Totally beyond me. So it's like, I totally get the mantra of just leave the hospital as much as possible. So I know I have appeared as a whiny boy, but it was an unbelievable experience.
I remember also you mentioned to us that they even pulled out an idea of like you're gonna get hit by a lorry as you go out the door or something, and it's gonna be on them or
I know. I tried to take him outside. Exactly. Like while she was sleeping, and they went, no, you can't go outside with your baby. I went, why not? And they're like, because if you get hit, verbatim, if you get hit by a trolley, we're liable. It's like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? A trolley.
How many
trolleys are there outside the hospital?
Just lurking, It's like it's common knowledge that there are trolleys lurking outside hospital doors for young men with their kids.
And a part of me was like, I've got to pick my battles here.
Yeah, right.
I didn't want to cause a scene because Heather's gone through a lot, so I was like, I'm gonna pick my battle for just leaving. Anyway. I was just like, this is insane. And, so I broke her out of prison and got her home, and And it was amazing.
And just chilled in the pool yourself instead.
Yeah, exactly.
Is the pool still there? I wonder.
No,
I've not seen the pool.
No. We rented it, so it's gone.
Ah, cool.
But Heather went up to bed, and she got sleep, and I just looked after Christopher. It was wonderful. Like, I just was sitting down on the couch, just my little baby boy, and he's just so small and lovely. He's just sleeping on me, and then it was every 3 hours he's got to feed. So 3 hours gone, I bring him up to feed. I made Heather like a steak and some really some good veg and stuff. So it's like really good nutritious food.
And some toast for reminding to be put on the side. So
and she ate a lot. It was really good. Like, she was just so obviously she just went through an unbelievable workout, and that was wonderful. I loved that. I just got to look after them both, and I had this probably unearned sense of confidence in that Christopher was going to be fine. I was like, I know he's going to latch on. The doctors came down, and when we were in the hospital, just checking up on him and stuff, and they have a heart murmur when they're first born. They've got a hole in their heart, I think, and it's after 24 hours it closes up.
Mm-hmm. If
If they don't close up, it's a bit of an issue. And he was coming down and checking, and I had all the confidence in the world that he was going to be fine. I was like, I had this sense of he is perfect. There's nothing that's going to be wrong with him, and he was fine. Obviously, I wasn't going to say don't check him and everything, but I just knew it'd be fine. It was lovely. And the same with his latching. I was like, as long as Heather gets some sleep, he'll be grand. But since then, he's gone from a little person that couldn't hold up his head to now he's nearly walking, and it's lovely. Like, one of the things that he's got from me is he just laughs all the time. He just giggles, and that's the best sound in the world. Like, the first time that I made him giggle, it was like, there's nothing that beats this. Nothing at all. So yeah, it's wonderful. It's definitely giving me some perspective as well. It's good.
I wonder, have you been a spiritual or religious, however you want to put it, person for longer? Or is this fairly new? Because don't get me wrong, I might be really ignorant here, but from my perspective, I've only learned about you and Heather being quite
Christian.
Spiritual after Kit is here. So I've had a discussion with my father a while back about how having a baby changes your life. And I'm wondering, do you see that as a... Did it reinvigorate some of your faith, or what? Or is it completely circumstantial?
I don't know if I'll ever know for certain, but I think it's separate. I always... when I went to church when I was younger, so I always had the knowledge that the best people in my life and my favourite people and the people that I could look up to the most as a good example have been Christian. And I'm quite a skeptical person, and I'm quite a challenging person, and when I was younger I'd go to church and I'd go to Scripture Union camps. And
what's that?
It's basically kids holiday weeks where they'd go away and they'd camp, and they would be led by Christians, and you'd go to worship and stuff, and you would have talks and everything, then you'd go and play your sports and everything and have a normal camp experience.
But a bit of scouts, but with additional layer of
maybe not
Christianity. And
it's not survival stuff, but
okay.
It's kind of just
for fun.
Yeah. So I'd do them, and I'd feel very spiritually energized, and I would come back home feeling on top of the world. I'd feel, I've got so much faith, And then 2 weeks would go by and I'm in Bathgate and I'm surrounded by nobody with faith, like, apart from my mum, you know, and I didn't hang out with her that much, I'd hang out with my friends. So I had all of these difficult questions, like, you know, I learned philosophy and what determinism is and stuff, and that was I couldn't see any like logical reason that that's not correct. And you know, I'd hear the stories of the Bible and I think that's not real. Like, how can you say that Jesus fed 5,000 people from a basket full of bread? That's clearly, like, you know, you kind of have that arrogance of like a new person, like a current age person versus someone a long time ago. You think, oh, it's a coping mechanism or something, I don't know.
Marketing strategy.
Yeah, or, you know, they had nothing better to do than this kind of thing. It was an arrogance, and then, you know, I'd have all these questions and criticisms, but nobody to answer them. Like, I had my minister, you know, here in Edinburgh that would go, but he was never. Joe, for example, would answer these questions, and he's gone through all of them, and he's a good sparring partner with that. My other minister, although he's an incredible minister, would never meet me there. So it led me away from faith. However, I've always had an apologetic attitude towards Christianity. I think that it's a great thing, but I was never convinced by it. And, you know, fast forward to me having a baby, I've always had the notion of bringing them up Christian, but it seemed a bit too two-faced, you know, a bit hypocritical. So I was like, okay, now that I listen to podcasts, a lot of the people that I listen to are Christian, and they're very smart, and they're a lot smarter than I am, and, you know, they're encouraging me to go to church a lot, and so I've always had it in the back of my mind, I need to go to church and give it a shot. And one piece of advice, I think it was from Jordan Peterson, and I think that C.S. Lewis and a bunch of other people have said it, is treat Christianity as though it's true and see what happens. So all of these things were adding up, and the birth of Christopher, I was like, okay, I better get a move on, because I don't want to start it when he's 10 and it's a bit harder for him to get into it. And then Charlie Kirk got shot, right? He was, you know, I thought he was a very, very good man and a very good role model for people. I loved him. I thought he was a great guy. I know a lot of people think that. But I thought he was great and definitely didn't deserve to get shot. I mean, he's got 2 young children and a wife. But at his memorial, Erica Kirk, his wife, got up on stage, and this was like a week after he'd got shot, and clearly a broken person, like her world's been completely turned upside down. She's got 2 children where she can't even explain what's happened to them, what's happened to their dad. And she got up and she forgave Charlie's killer. And I was like sobbing watching her do this, because I was like, this is a woman of such strong faith that she's able to do that. You could not do that if you're atheist, right? You could not go up on stage and forgive someone like that. That's what I felt. I was like, that's just such strength that's come from such powerful faith and having God on her side. And then the next thing she said was, men, women, go to church. Just go. And I was like, okay, that's it. And then I walked into Joe's church, and he had that book, you know, Road Back to God, a book for modern men dissatisfied by a modern world. And I read that, and that was it really. I still have my skeptical, you know, modern side to me that's like critical, but I've definitely learned when, you know, that's got time and place. I can't have that on all the time. You know, if there's a a story in the Bible, for example, and it's talking about, Jesus doing something, maybe I should be thinking about the point rather than, oh, do I really think it's scientifically plausible to do this? Well, if God's real, that's dead easy for him to do, is the answer. Maybe there's another point to the story. So yeah, if that answers your question.
In a way it does, and in a way it sort of confirms it, right? Because you don't want to, you want to practice what you preach. Like if, and I have no doubt that Christopher is in best hands ever, because you're like the most aware couple me and Julia know. And in terms of like reading the books about, I literally had a discussion with our friend Neil from Jiu-Jitsu about it, like the Anxious Generation book that you've read, and like all of these things for me, they signal like you care to care for him, not only like, oh, I have a baby now, I'll care. Obviously I have no doubt that any parent out there, unless in an extreme condition, is caring for their child. But it does, personally I do believe it necessitates our times and how the world is necessitate a certain level of education for yourself before or during the child's existence, to just make sure that he's okay. And in a sense you answered saying that it correlated, or maybe it was motivated in a sense, just as a reinvigoration of you getting back to study it and engaging with it. It's a beautiful coincidence that you went into that church and not the other, but we know that there are no coincidences. So in terms of the whole idea of like symbolism and stuff, I think that's also a major point in terms of, in general, like if, I think it was one of the rules from Peterson as well, is like listen as if someone who's talking had something to tell you, right? Like as if they had something to offer
so
to
if
you.
they know something you don't.
Yeah, exactly. And if you approach any text with that attitude, you open yourself up for benefiting from it effectively, as long as you keep your critical thinking on, rather than just eat garbage. But like you have to stand guard at the door of your mind, for sure. But in a sense that does change, like, and I do believe it would benefit the education of younger people in general if that was, for example, what the Catholic Church would offer, right? Because as you said, like your minister wasn't really happy to discuss these things. I come from a background, and by now my listeners know about this, I come from a background of like the Roman Catholicism in Poland, and there is no place to discuss stuff unless you join some Bible study, which I always perceived as some cuckoo people, because if you're attending church and then you want to meet afterwards, I'm like, something's wrong with you. So I never went. Maybe they're actually quite nice. I have no doubt they're nice. Like, this is not to say that you're not nice people. I'm just saying, like, from my perspective of like being told what to think, and not having any space, neither at school, at the education, if it could be called an education class, or at the church, never having any like option to actually discuss things, and just being told and not being mentioned that it's a symbolic, because that's a trick, right? If I am to share with you a story, the moment I insist on you first believing that it's true, you're missing the point, because you're struggling to find like, why is that person sure it's true? It kind of is irrelevant if it's true, as long as the point of the story is shared, right? So if they were to approach it with a bit more maybe humility or maybe openness to either discern, or at least to mention like, these are the things that we believe to be true, but you don't necessarily need to believe they are true to start engaging with them and then see what happens. That's why I feel from what you mentioned about the speech. It's like, or like from Peterson or C.S. Lewis, is like treat it as if it's real and see what happens. we do that with everything. We treat money as if it's real and see what happens. We have a market, otherwise we wouldn't, you know? We treat friendship as if it's real and see what happens. We create that by treating it that way, right?
Yeah, so there's loads. There's
everything. I mean, everything we do here, we treat this as if it's real, right?
Yeah.
Right now, no one's listening to us other than ourselves and maybe my nosy neighbor who's just behind the wall, you know, with a little glass. People who are listening to this in whatever, or not, in whatever space and time, we've only imagined them to be there now. We're treating as if it's real. Mm-hmm. And then at some point it is. It's like, yeah, it's so from that standpoint, it speaks to me as well because it allows me to be open to these ideas and enrich myself through them without the necessity of arguing about the minutes of, like, you know, proving to one another. Because the moment we're trying to prove with science, which I think in many ways became a religion, if you think about it, if we try to prove scientism, if we try to prove with science that which is not provable through science, it's like you're looking through binoculars to see the microscope. And you're like, I can't see anything there, it's just blurred. It's like because you're using the wrong lens, you know? Yeah.
I was listening to Alex O'Connor and John Lennox talk about this. But it was like, it's missing the, you know, the like what you're saying, they're on two different levels. Like you can't, like science can't prove anything outside of the universe, like God's existence, for example. Like you can't. I think Alex O'Connor made a really cool analogy. It's like you come across a book, a Shakespearean book, and you know you've never read before. And you're like, oh look, all of these lines, you know, we've discovered the law of the full stop. Oh, and at the start of each line there's a capital letter. We've discovered the law of the uppercase grammatical letter and stuff. Oh, and this rhymes. We've discovered the law of rhyme and stuff. But hold on, like, given enough time, I might be able to tell you, I'm able to prove where this book came from and who made this book and stuff by just understanding more and more about the text. But that's an error. Like, you will never be able to do that.
I think it just speaks to what we discussed earlier, right? Like, it's really difficult for us to, with our limited senses, it's really difficult as you're playing the game to understand how the game was designed. Like, we know the rules of the game. We know that if you step out the window, you'll fall. Yeah. It's not necessarily that I know exactly why that is the case. I just know it to be true because experientially, or at least, you know, from common knowledge, we've shared that some people did that and it wasn't the best. But yeah, this is also why I think it's so attractive for people to explore these concepts, even if just for the benefit of thinking deeper. Because I know that, you know, we might not be, I don't know how good are you with not watching Reels or Instagram, to be honest. Are you?
I'm quite good, yeah. I mean, well, I've not...
I'm quite good, I do it 3 hours a day.
No, like, I've, you know, most of the time I don't watch any Reels, but occasionally I will pick up my phone, go to youtube.com and find myself on it. And then that's like 15 minutes gone and I've like, whoa. But most of the time, I mean, I've not done it in weeks. And then before that, it was like a week of doing it, and then before that was months. So, but yeah, full addict when it comes to Reels. Like, it's really not good.
But you know, but my point is exactly that I'm afraid that many people these days, which is why the podcast even came to be, people don't read enough and they spend so much time on these little nuggets of, some of them might be wisdom, but for the most part, it's very difficult. This discussion cannot be taken in full its glory if you just clip 20 seconds of it.
Yeah.
It's fast food for the brain. And
Mhm.
and in the same way, you know, as you're embarking on this challenge of reading a full study Bible, which I think is also, if anything, I'm considering getting myself such a beautiful piece as well once we go back, and actually engaging with it, because it's such a beautiful practice. You know, like I read every day. Why wouldn't I read something like that every day? It's not. I don't think it's beneficial for me to frame it in a sense of like, oh, if you read this, then you're this. Not really. I'm just engaging with the text. That does something to you. Like it allows you to not only train your brain simply by reading, but also you're spending time in a more less more heavy, less quick, less dopamine driven way. And I think even just reading books changes your life, and then if you choose the books correctly, it's like a flywheel of progress, right? Because there are books out there for everything, and of course everything is on the internet nowadays, but it's much more difficult for me to fully focus while I'm looking at the screen for long than if I'm looking at the book. The book is more boring in a sense of like stimulating, you know, even just the color. Change the color of your screen for black and white and see how attractive it becomes. It's curious.
No, yeah, totally. Reading the Bible's been good. I've done it now.
Do you also read all of those like sort of analysis of it and stuff, or like historical?
Yeah, I mean, in the study Bible, there's loads of like commentary on every verse essentially, and you know, because obviously, if you don't know, the Bible is split up into Old Testament and New Testament. The Old Testament's got historical books. Well, it's first got the Pentateuch, which is the Torah. That's the 5 books of the law essentially, and it's got Genesis in it, which has got a lot of narrative, but it sets the law for the Jews. And then after that, it's got historical books. Then it goes to poetic and wisdom literature. Then it goes to prophecy. Then it goes to New Testament. Now, I forgot what my point was going to be. What did you say?
I said that just engaging with this, you know, it's just a more.
The text, yeah. So like in the study Bible, for the historical text, it's obviously got loads of archaeological information there and stuff, you know, and because it mentions a lot about places, you know, in Israel, modern day Israel and Turkey and Iran and all that. There's been a lot of archaeological digs and stuff that can point to different things. So there's a lot of like just, you know, sciencey information in the study Bible. But then if you go to, you know, Proverbs, it's not going to be like that too much. It's going to be, what does this mean? You know, in the translation it came from, does this mean actually? Is there a reason that they've repeated in a slightly different way in Hebrew, and that's because in their time, if you repeat something, it means more. You know, so it will explain things like that.
Is it because you have the English Standard Version? Is it challenging to read it in terms of like the language it uses?
It is compared to a normal book, but you get used to it pretty quick.
It's not like unintelligible for
not at
a
all.
layman. Yeah.
Not at all. There's definitely translations that make it a lot easier to read, but it's their interpretation of it, which is
that's the problem, right?
A little bit, yeah. But I mean, reading any Bible is going to be good, probably. You know. But it's been fantastic. I've really enjoyed it. I've got to stress though, if anyone's thinking about getting into it, taking it seriously, the thing that I would recommend the most is prayer. Like, praying as though God exists, just taking that mindset, just putting away that this is a weird thing to do, the mindset. By the third time, you'll be feeling like God is right beside you, and He is, and that's definitely been the most powerful piece for me. Like, I've developed a relationship with Him. Wherever I am, He's with me, and that's been great. And there's a lot of, I feel distant to Him when I sin, and that's a real thing. Like, the whole concept of holiness, and the fact that no sin can be in presence of holiness, that's a real thing for me. Like, if I start singing, I don't acknowledge it, and I don't kind of repent a little bit in my head, I do feel distant.
Do you? We can follow that route, and then I'd like you to maybe also consider like any other big topic you would like to explore, because we're like 1 hour in probably. We don't know because it reset. How would you define sin? Because so this is the thing that I'm sort of not maybe struggling with, but I definitely could go into a debate about it. Is like, is sin only that which is specified as sin, or is sin that which we consider to be sin? Because there are some guidelines, I think, basically in the Bible and many other. For me, whenever I find multiple sources pointing in the same direction, it's an indication that is somewhat true, or at least popularly considered to be real. And also, on top of that, I think our conscious, our awareness, our, let's say, soul or whatever, knows when we're faltering, right? So, for example, why is it so shocking, in my opinion, to see someone die or to see someone kill? Because that's not natural, okay? So that's a sin. I think to kill is to sin. Why is it not okay to steal from someone? Because if property rights do not exist, we're just rendered into a state of constant chaos. Even animals have property rights, if you think about it. So that's also, yet again, for me, an indicator that that's sin, How do you define for yourself, or have you had a discussion with yourself about like whether all that is encompassed there or not is there? Because for context, and sorry, I'm sort of like rambling a little bit.
No problem.
In the Catholic Church, and we actually discussed it with Joe as well, you're not supposed to have a wife if you're a priest, right? So overall, the whole idea of sex has become sinful, yeah? Mm-hmm. To the point that for many generations, sex has become a taboo and you should not think about it, you should not do it, you should not even consider it. All kinds of even though by now we know that, for example, masturbation is actually healthy for you, to the degree that it's literally just letting go of the amassed old matter and sort of cleaning the pipes as you in an ideal world. Obviously it's a participatory exercise. In the way that I was taught through my religious upbringing, that was all really, really wrong, right? And to in a sense, to sin would be to even consider that. And I always I come back to that topic in particular when it comes to relations between men and women, and in an upbringing and how to reconcile it. Because effectively what it did to me when I was younger was, the moment I started getting interested in girls and potentially even having sex as a young boy, I was a sinner, and that's it. And you're like, every time you do it, if you think about it as you do it, then you're just gonna have a bad time. I'm not advocating for that to happen. I'm just reporting my own experience of it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I do wonder, like, how do you reconcile? Do you have an additional list of things that you've added to the list as a sin, or do you just go by intuition? I don't know.
It's a bit above my pay grade, this question, but I will give it a shot.
For yourself.
For myself, I heard a good piece of advice, and it was be really careful in defining standards that are not in the Bible for other people. So, for example, like I think the Catholic Church doesn't like contraception, right? I can kind of get the whole thing behind that, but it doesn't. That's quite is debatable within the context of the Bible. I'd say that the sins that are very explicitly detailed in the Bible are obviously absolute, but we need to go by that framework in order to make decisions on how we go forward. Because, for example, in the Bible, it's not going to talk about the ethics of buying a sex robot when you're married, right? But, I could quite comfortably say that's not a good idea, and that's quite sinful, especially to your wife, right? That's probably going to fall into the lusting after another woman sin, right? But the fact of the matter is, you have to use the truths of the Bible to make judgments on whether something's a sin or not. For me, I'm trying to be as brutally honest with myself when I'm going forward, like even to the point where if I have a conversation with my friend and I get too animated and I let myself, it's a common one for me, I let myself get too emotional and I'll say a mental thing rather than just having a calm approach. It's not like I've really sinned, but I definitely feel like I missed the mark, right? And I've probably gone off where I should be. It's not like I've murdered anyone. There's another interesting thing in the Bible, like it's, sin is detailed, especially in Paul's writing, about a thing that has us enslaved to it, like it's an actual entity, and there's this whole idea that, before you're Christian, you're enslaved to sin. I do feel like that, and when you profess your sin, your old self dies with Christ, so you're no longer enslaved to sin. You still battle it on a day-to-day, but you're no longer enslaved, and that's a really powerful idea at the very least. That's a very powerful thing, I think.
Yeah, no, you just made me think about the whole concept of like how do you ensure for me, and that brutally honest thing, that's what I'm trying to emulate and discuss here. I know, especially, and this is fairly recent, and I mean recent, just about 5 years ago, or now maybe it's 7. I keep saying 5 years, and it's probably been 5 years at some point. I feel like I've sort of woken up as I'm no longer running on autopilot, and I'm starting to crack the code in terms of like, oh my god, okay, like, hello, it's me here dealing with this, riding this avatar. And I believe that if you're in touch with yourself, whether it is through prayer, contemplation, just quieting the mind, and I'm not talking we are the mind, I think our awareness is way above the mind. The mind is just yet another layer and a tool. I can tell by the way I feel whether or not something is sinful. And I know that this is a tricky thing because, of course, like if your moral compass is crooked, yes, I could say that and go, do whatever I want, and this is the this is certainly the strawman, the argument against it is like, well, if we're all setting up our own standards, then we're all doomed to crash at any point. But I do believe that there is the golden rule of like, do unto others as you would do to yourself, and that takes care essentially of everything with the others. And then with yourself, I believe that you kind of know when you're doing wrong, or when it might be the discomfort you're feeling, it might be the aftertaste that is just not nice, maybe the outcome also signals, a good way to check yourself whether or not you're doing something wrong is like, well, is the outcome what you wanted? Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking like short-term immediate pleasure outcome, I'm talking like take it with a grain of salt, wait a week, a month, a year, a decade, and see what you did. And of course, the shorter that feedback loop becomes, the more you're prone not to do it again, right? Like, which is why it's so beneficial to discuss with other people their experiences, because I can learn from your mistake on something, and hopefully, if it's not within my lesson on this in this life to learn it, I can emulate the skill for art. But it certainly just made me think, as you said, about the feeling of like you've missed the mark. Mm-hmm. There is this idea, like, in polytheism, in Greek and Romans, as they had all the different gods effectively were emotions, right? Each god was related to a certain emotion. Like Ares was rage, and then you had Aphrodite, which was love, and all that. When we get worked up and we like spout out fire at our spouse or whatever, in a sense, if you think about it, that emotion possessed you, and maybe that's that sin possessing you in that moment, right? Which is also why there is such a big, from my perspective, such a big emphasis on being humble and like really not getting ahead of yourself, because pride can as one of the 7 deadly sins can facilitate that. Like, if I'm prideful to know that what I'm saying and doing is right, when I'm doing those things I might miss the mark and not notice that I did. So yeah, that's just a thought that I had. And I guess yet again it's an indicator of like those 7 deadly sins. If that's the case, if we assume them to be correct, then looking through them, you could apply them to basically everything, including our modern day, right? Mm-hmm. Like gluttony, it can be gluttony in terms of food, it can be gluttony about everything else. If I spend all day, every day recording podcasts and just sending them out without any regard to anything, including my own health, that's probably quite a sinful behavior. Yeah,
absolutely.
Curious.
Yes. I don't know what to add to that, really.
Let's do one more topic. You can ask me something, or
sure,
I can.
So tell me about this. Keeping it towards spirituality, I guess. Where are you at the moment? So last time you mentioned you were looking at energy stuff, or?
Well, no. So I mean, energy. More and more people are coming out, basically showing that quantum physics perfectly aligns with faith, in a sense that, like, as we said earlier about whether God is the great computer, or whether God is the first mover, or whether God is the awareness, whatever it is, I believe we are the one that I'm most inclined to perceive is like we were given a spark from God, like this, we're sons of God and daughters of God, and we're living within this experience, I think there are many lives. I'm quite certain of it in terms of and I don't think it goes against the Christian religion, by the way. I'm quite curious why they've not taken it on board. My idea really is that it's much more difficult to sell people the idea of going to church and praying for the better death. If you realize that there is no death, you just get reborn again to do another God's work. I think we're on an upward spiral, this David ladder. Our souls are, and there is a scale of holiness on the top of the scale, or even beyond it is obviously being the being that is the first mover, the creator, God, whatever you want to put it. And we're just striving as souls to go up, or we fail to go up, and therefore, like snakes and ladders kind of game, you're just somewhere on the path. And I think each of our lives has a certain mixture of lessons that our soul has decided upon itself to learn through. And from the energetic standpoint, I'm gonna, please forgive me for trying to explain it, but if everything is energy vibrating, on the scale of vibration, you have the highest vibration and the lowest, and dependent on the level, things will be more static and less. So we're in this sweet spot of being physical matter, but light enough to be able to move.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, we're able to interact with this server, whatever, with this game, on this level. We cannot see the spirit because the spirit is so high vibration that it no longer has physical form, because physical form is imperfect. And God is, God, it's perfect. So it's the highest vibratory level. That's why we cannot see the soul, because the spirit itself has no matter. And what we learned during our workshops with Julia that we go to and stuff is that if we're electromagnetic entities,
mm-hmm.
if there are meridians in our body, if we are literally constantly vibrating, then by the moment you pray, you send out a certain frequency of signals. The moment you sin, you send out a frequency of signals. And there is this principle of resonance in the universe, right? Like goes to like. If I punch you, you're gonna punch me. If there is that's why I believe, for example, that Jesus could make all the breads and all the baskets of fish he wanted, because he achieved a certain level of frequency through his mind and body, from his soul, if we consider him to be the Son of God as well, just an awakened being. I think also Buddha and all the great sages, he was able to bend the physical reality to his needs, because the higher the frequency, the more power you have to influence what's going on. If you come from the state of fear, you're going to be much less powerful than someone that comes from the state of love. That's why what I understand by Jesus saying, like, to turn the other cheek, to forgive, because whenever you dwell on these emotions that are of lower states, you're lowering your frequency, and you're attracting. If you have thoughts of lack, you're attracting lack. And what the most sort of insightful thing that I've learned recently from our workshops was that the quantum field, God, does not know negation. There is no. So whenever you say, I don't want that, what they hear is, I want that. there is no, because there is no darkness, there is just lack of light. And therefore, stand guard at the door of your mind, since your thoughts are emitting frequency and your words are your thoughts spelled out like a spell. First there was a word. Why? Because the word is an idea that creates the physical form. We are recording a podcast here, and in the same way, you study the Bible and you first render the information through your mind. You embody it, because everything stays in the body. This conversation, we're feeling it. A body is like a body and mind are like the receiver and sender of information, and our soul is interacting with it. So, if anything, with every day that passes in terms of me doing certain prayers, effectively, it's like a prayer, and learning about these ideas and quantum physics in particular, is like it not only puts into perspective all this, like, in my opinion, bullshit about like cause and effect and that's all, nothing else is there. Not really. You can be the cause, you can be the effect. There's been some studies showing that this is so crazy. They did a study on people did the test, and then a group of people, after doing the test, studied for it. And they had better results than those that didn't. Because there is... You first do the test, and then a part of your group studies for that test afterwards. Those guys had better results than those that didn't. Because there is the way I understand it is like in quantum field, there is no time. Time is our way of experiencing our process of passing, essentially, right? We are born, and we are like going up in terms of, like, let's say whatever the health of our body, and then ourselves being 30, we're all already past the curve going up, and now we're gonna hopefully with grace, but effectively fade away. It's like a heartbeat, right? So that's the principle of rhythm. There is always the breathing of maybe the Big Bang is nothing else than just another, although I'm not so sure whether the Big Bang is like just another way of stopping people from believing, let's not get into that. But from this standpoint, I think, if anything, the whole quantum physics and stuff, and learning about this and attending the workshops with Julia, I wouldn't say it brought me closer to church, because I think church is an institution and it's by default it's human, so it's faulty, but it definitely brought me closer to God. And whatever God you want to consider that God to be. Like, my God is not your God, in a sense that I imagine my God different. That doesn't mean that we have to argue about it, So I believe that we are literally, with our godlike spark, with our free will, being in this sweet spot of frequency in vibration, but on a physical plane, we are given a chance with our life to experience the physical, which is the most interesting if you think about it. It's rather boring to be just like, yeah, it's great, life is interesting because it's ups and downs, as much as it might be a bit challenging at times. And we're just coming up here to learn something. And that's why I mentioned to remember when Kit was born, because the whole cosmology, which has been completely shunned from science after the whole like scientific revolution and stuff, there is so much in many different cultures talking about like how the moment you're born and where you're born on the planet, you can tell by the stars what will be your strengths, what will be your weaknesses, what potential adventure you're on. I'm gonna show you after the recording what I mean. If you believe that So for example, let's leave belief for now. I'm just going to talk about this is quite personal though, but like whatever. I'm with some challenges that I've had in my life. A big one, what I've recognized lately, was this idea that, you know, I really wanted to get away. I felt like I need to, you know, it's going to be so incredible to study abroad. And things fell into place. I participated in a few exchanges before, so I felt like encouraged. And then some ladies came up to our school and advertised it, and I was like, yeah, I was hooked. Another mate of mine was supposed to go, then he didn't. If anything, I'm quite grateful that he didn't, because I think that would be a limiting experience for me. And then I embarked, right? And for the last 10 years, I've been living away, away from my family, you know, away from that friendship group. I've never lived in Poland as an adult, in a sense. And I was thinking recently about, like, why, first of all, how did it happen that I was here? Especially that I think at that point it was more like an autopilot. But also, like, what's the reason? Why am I so, you know, attracted to being so away? And now I've married a girl who's from there, and I'm challenged with the idea of going back. And her being very close to the family, whereas me, I'm close to my family, but I'm not close to my family, physically, right? And there was a lot of pride in me over these years of proving that there was a lot of, like, I think, guilt stemming from leaving my brother in particular to live in Poland that I had to deal with, but pride kept me going. And like, because I was raging against my family side uncles and grandmas saying, like, you should not do that, that's too far, you know, whatever, all of these things. And for a long time that was a big, like, a pride point for me, or at least a journey. And I checked for myself recently the cosmology of my birth, trying to figure out, well, let's see if it's, you know horoscopes, they're usually very general and essentially they apply to everyone all the time. But for whatever reason, they were a part of people's life for a very long time before we decided to scrap them completely and make ridicule of them. And I checked, and the thing that popped up for me in terms of the alignment of whatever, some planet that is supposedly indicating your challenge for your life, your karmic, your lesson, was to learn to find your home, to what home is for you. Where is home? What is home for me? And that's a great question for me to ponder. And obviously by now I've made my decision and I know where it is. It's with Julia, wherever. But it's an interesting thing if you look through that lens, what I've experienced and how I've navigated these things. I have no reason to be like, this is complete rubbish, whatever. It certainly rings true the moment I start analyzing, for example, why I have such a big resistance of going back. Why? The moment that pride goes away, the moment, our family friend said to me that no one really cares about you but your wife and you, and even it's a stretch to consider your wife to be caring for you because primarily she's caring for herself and you're just an extension of her. The moment you realize that you're alone in this world, or at least with your wife, and that's it, you're defining your terms, right? And you're no longer defined by your family saying you cannot do that, or it's better out there. Like, my parents think it's better here than there. They've never lived here. I think it's better there than here. I've never lived there, you know?
Do you believe that you're alone in this world?
Not anymore. But I think in its essence, for a long time, for sure I did. I think that's why I think that was what popped up the most for me as I was meditating and contemplating and praying through my year in Kuwait. That was a life-changing experience, like any experience is, but that in particular, because I was alone there. Like, I was full on alone. The people that were around me that were supposed to be there as a support group were the furthest from it. I was more feeling at home with a stranger in a shop or with one of the CEOs during an interview than with my flatmate. And that played a huge role in me, like basically going within, you know, like finding, staying sane, surrounded by an insanity of whatever the experience was. And I'm not saying about Kuwait because that was wonderful. I'm talking about the nature of my collaboration with those people at work and living with them effectively, you know, like I lived with people that I worked with and I was not like appreciated the way you would want to be appreciated with your flatmate, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's just curious. I'm gonna share with you, and you can, you know, take it or leave it. But we can check if you want Chris's.
Yeah, sounds good.
We checked with Julia as well, and she was also like, "Yeah, that sounds about right." But yeah.
So, with your family, you know, you said you had that pride of, you know, they said don't do this because of X, Y, and Z. Like, are you quite content now? Like that doesn't hold any bearing on you, or is there still like a bit of resistance? Oh, I need to prove them wrong.
It would probably be quite an arrogant thing to say that I'm already over it. I would argue that it's never gonna be over until it, like, for whatever reason, is. I'm definitely much more at peace with it.
Mm-hmm.
And a big part of it is just noticing it, right? I've reconciled with my brother. He never saw it as a problem.
Yeah.
It was my guilt. That's the problem about guilt, which is also a really big problem, I think, in church, in Catholic Church in particular, that they focus so much on guilt. Guilt is a heavy weight that we put on over ourselves. It's like wearing every day, deciding to have this little big rock, you know, on a piece of straw around your neck, essentially. In terms of the whole like proving wrong and everything, I'm still coming to terms with it. You know, you're familiar. I think by the time this episode airs, I might be already past that challenging conversation with my parents. But ultimately, I just see what happens, live with it. But it certainly helps the moment you reframe it through the lens of like, it's me and Julia, and whatever we decide, and you know, whoever else comes along as our kids, whatever we decide, and that's that. And all those other people, the problem with advice is people think what's best for you through their own lens, and this is a huge problem in trying to provide people with any sort of advice to whoever, because you might be expert in one thing, but if you're offering me advice that is expert for you in your field, but I'm in a different field, that advice might just put me in a worse state that if I didn't, you know, if I never received it, right? And this is, I think, the point that Mr. Wojtek, our friend of the family, said. He was like, no one gives a shit about you. And not in a sense that they wish you wrong or they ignore you, but because they don't know all the inside information about your life, their advice is nothing else than just another piece of puzzle. And it can be from your puzzle, it doesn't have to be. You know, it's up to you to decide. And maybe for a better or worse, sometimes it's better not to ask advice because you don't know where the person is going from, right? So, go on then.
So you mentioned about the guilt thing, and did you say that you don't think that guilt's a good thing, especially in the Catholic Church?
Oh, no, I mean enticing people to feel guilty by default, and they play on it loads.
Right.
There is the whole prayer even, which a part of it is literally just like thumping your chest and saying that I'm guilty. And this is maybe, slightly yet again in the whole like symbolic, but everything is ritual, right? Like those are all, we embody those things if we agree that spelling and words and all of that plays a part in our creating the reality. I don't think it's a healthy thing to just like mindlessly say I'm guilty, I'm guilty, I'm guilty. You know what I mean? So while there is an absence of the space to discuss what does it mean for you, they are very quick to tell you that you're guilty and you're sinful. And like, okay, judge ye, yet ye be judged, right? Like, I'm okay to discuss with myself, to maybe even, have the counsel of my minister, whether or not I am guilty of something. But I wouldn't go around telling people that they're guilty. You know what I mean? And that's effectively what, at least in my experience, the church institution in Poland offered. It's like from the get-go, you're like, you're the sinful, you're the sinner, you're the guilty, all you're doing is wrong unless you're coming here and praying. I would argue that many people use it as a way out of all the things that they do outside of the church, right? I'll just go every week to, pray, and then I'll just be hitting my wife and doing all the, crazy things that I'm guilty of at week's end. That's what I mean. I'm not saying like guilt in and of itself. I think guilt, if you're feeling guilt, it's yet again an indicator, a feedback. You sinned, you missed the mark. Can you learn from it? And I don't think there is a practical. So there is an. I don't know if there is an analog story. I bet there is in the Bible, but there is a parable of the raft in Buddhist teachings, which goes something like the two monks are traveling across the plain, and then they come upon a river and they need to cross, right? And the older monk decides like they're gonna build a raft, and they build the raft and they get across, and then as they get on the other side, the older monk, continues, and the younger monk starts trying to disassemble this raft and like put it on his back to carry it. And obviously, like, he's not having a good time with it. I'm paraphrasing, I'm pretty sure, but whatever. The point is, the older monk says, like, you need to leave the raft. We don't need it anymore. And that's, I think, what you need to do with all the things that are not serving you anymore. Like, if you're feeling guilty, then let that sink in, understand what made you feel guilty, take the lesson, maybe repent, go apologize or do whatever you need to do to render that free. It's like in a computer, if you keep opening all the tabs without ever closing old ones, your computer is gonna, like, at some point it's just gonna be like, no, sorry mate, I'm out. And that's effectively what I think people do when we're beating ourselves with stuff that is no longer relevant. But of course, because you've not taken in the lesson and dealt with it and rendered it exit, you just carry it around, and you carry all that baggage around and that guilt. And I think, feeling guilty, however inappropriate it might be to feel guilty about leaving your younger brother because you go study. It's not my choice or his choice that we were born the way we were born. It's completely normal that I go to uni, and maybe I should have stayed in the same town for less. But it's not obvious that if I were to stay, and this is what my brother told me, which is a really wise point, is like, it's not obvious that if I stayed in Poland, I would have as close relationship to him as I do now. You know what I mean? There's always so many what ifs. But there is no point in that guilt being there, because it's literally like a little cancerous cell festering, right? Or a baggage that you carry around with you. And I see it all the time in people, whether it's like, they've made a mistake before, or maybe they've had a relationship that didn't work out. And instead of taking those lessons, those failures, and turning it into a success story by just bouncing off. They carry it around, and you know, I know of people that have not had a relationship since like 6 years ago or 10 years ago because of something that happened, which is just, you know, you're limiting your life, you're stopping yourself from growth by allowing that muddy puddle of water to stay muddy puddle of water, right? Instead of actually just taking a little, you know, wiping it away and going forward. So that's my point about, like, you know, guilt. Not in a sense that guilt in of itself is it's certainly a low frequency energy. Are you familiar with David Hawkins' scale, map of consciousness?
No, not at all.
Okay, yeah, so I don't have a physical copy, but that's where I take it from. The Letting Go is the book that I would recommend and it's actually the second most popular episode on the show.
Oh, nice.
Which I think speaks, and do you, guess what's the first? I didn't do one about the Bible yet, so...
12 Rules for Life?
No, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying, the holy book of Tibetan.
Wow.
So my point is, you know, I don't think it's a coincidence that those powerful books are. But yeah, I'll link it below as well. And 12 Rules for Life, obviously, I need to because we've mentioned it. Like, but there is this map of consciousness, right? And he basically suggests that on the highest level, it's obviously like all the avatars of our history. So like Krishna, Buddha, Prophet Muhammad, Jesus, and all that. And then you go down, and there is like the I think it's unconditional love, neutrality, reason. No, unconditional love, neutrality, love, reason. Whatever and then the neutral point at which you turn to the right side of the equation is courage, actually, and below courage is anger, and below anger is pride, and below pride is fear, and below fear is grief, and then shame, guilt, apathy being the lowest of the and apparently the majority of humanity is just between that anger and courage. Right. There is also desire somewhere there, but you know, I think it speaks. It definitely rings true to me in a sense of what is courage. Like, courage is acting against that which you're scared of, despite of the fear, in faith that your acting will be successful, right? Mm-hmm. So I think courage is the first of the states when your faith plays a role, and I think faith is like crucial to any undertaking. Good luck making yourself a tea without belief that you can make it. You know, you will not try, or you will be just angry at it.
Yeah.
So yeah. We've done a lot of talking about spirituality today.
We have indeed. It's been good fun. Very good fun.
100%. Yeah, I guess. How do we finish this? Because I usually have the last sort of question for you, what you would like to leave with our listeners. But I think we've completely not followed any script whatsoever. So we might go till the end. What are you excited about for the coming? And you don't have to share stuff that would potentially put your life's plans at risk. I think there is a benefit of not sharing that publicly. But what are you excited about, or in the world or in your life, whatever? What's up?
I'm excited about my new job. So I've got a new job coming up. I'm really excited to start that. So I'll be switching it up, going into a more salesy position.
It's good that you started the interview by saying you don't know much about cybersecurity. At least now you're not putting yourself in jeopardy by stating that.
So yeah, I'll be be getting a new job, which is very cool. I'm excited for getting a house as well, a flat with just I mean, honestly, the church is what I'm most excited about. So just progressing in my faith and learning more.
How do you define? Will you define progress for yourself? How would you know, or do you know what I mean? Like, it's quite a challenging thing to define.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to become more of a godly man. You know, there's lots of men in my life now that are, you know, very. I want to get to be like them, you know, as much as possible. Be like Jesus as much as possible. Also, just learning lots, like, you know, learning the whole doctrine's quite an undertaking. You know, and learning more about the wisdom that's in the Bible. I mean, it's insane the things that's in the Bible, and it's so old, and it's like it's just as spot on. And it's like you listen to other people talk about wisdom and it makes me cringe now, knowing like the depth of the Bible, you know.
Yeah, but it's a matter of also who you're listening to talking, right? Like,
no, 100%.
It's a challenge these days, I think, in general, to have unless you facilitate. Look what we did here, right? Like we are setting ourselves a goal of having a meaningful conversation. How often on the daily basis do people do that as part of their? Even that intention changes the outcome, if that's what you're striving for.
Yeah, big time. So yeah, I've got becoming more fluent in being a Christian. I think is what I'm really looking forward to, because I'm very new to it, you know. How about you?
Awesome. What am I excited for? I'm excited to be a dad at some point, for sure. I keep talking about it so much. Maybe Julia will suddenly just be like, "Okay, let's go." It's like programming. No. What I'm excited about. Well, I mean, you know, there are things that I'm looking forward to in terms of like certainly living with Julia, just finally living fully with Julia rather than. Kind of long distance is okay, it's hard, it's doable. Don't let it discourage you if you want it, but it's certainly not a sustainable strategy like forever. At some point you should probably move in or just not do it altogether. I'm definitely excited about the whole podcast stuff. Like this year so far has been great. I've had more conversation episodes for this podcast this year than in all of the other years combined.
Wow.
It's absurd. Like I've had.
It's amazing.
It's and I keep having more and more. You know, so for example, I don't know. Probably for another 2 or 3 months, I'm not gonna even start the new season because I have so many conversations already scheduled.
Excellent.
Like this talk is gonna be there maybe July, I don't know.
Wow.
We're 2 months ahead. And I'm excited about the whole website, you know, that you've created for me, for which I'm so grateful. And now I just need to do the drudging part of actually filling it up, and I'm excited about that. I'm excited about like having a place that is, you know, don't get me wrong, I don't see this as the website is going to suddenly, you know, revolutionize my podcast life, but it definitely is just another notch up in the ladder, right? And it's just really cool. It's a cool thing to have. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited about vacation. I can't wait.
Oh yeah.
We've changed our plans slightly. We're no longer going to make a trip, but I'm still excited just to like have time off and, you know, just be with family, chill, read even more than I'm reading now.
Cool, mate.
So yeah. And I'm excited about kid's birthday. It's the first birthday, man. Like,
Oh yeah.
think how silly it is that child has no clue whatsoever that it's his birthday celebration. You know what I mean? What a shame. For the first 1 could argue 5 years of your life,
Yeah.
you have no clue whatsoever. Everyone's just like one day celebrating, you know, and you get all these random gifts and love additional on top of your, you know, everyday ration, and you don't know.
I know.
Like, he has no clue. Do you do any like hopefully I'll be there, but like do you do any traditions? For example, in Poland, from what I understand, is like for the first birthday there is this like folk tradition of putting different pieces of, like, you know, a hammer, a car, whatever, like tools and stuff on the floor, and the kids supposedly whatever they choose is like that's their interest or trade or whatever.
Cool.
Obviously, and now good luck trying to put like AI and robotics, and, you know, like to be up to date with the spirit of the time. But do you have such games or anything at all?
No, I don't think so. Not that I can think of. No.
Yeah. You know, and that's the irony.
Yeah.
How would you know? You were not aware. Like, I only know because I saw the pictures and I asked my mom, like, what's up with me, you know, holding that.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it was a hammer or something. Maybe I should become a carpenter to be more like Jesus.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. Well, thank you so much for this.
Thank you for having me.
And yeah, thank you guys for listening to our ramblings. Other than that, you know, if you enjoy it, just follow, subscribe, whatever you have to do, and it doesn't really matter as well. But yeah, thank you.
Thanks.